I would love to invite my guest for today. Her name is Lara Larson. She is the world's most renowned exorcist wife. This is a very interesting title. We're going to talk more about that, but would you guys please help me welcome my guest today? Yes, you can drop it in the chat. Say hello, Laura.
Aw, it's wonderful.
Laura, hello. Thank you so
Well,
much for joining me and agreeing to do this interview with me. I'm super excited and I'm just looking forward for everything that we're going to talk about. It's awesome.
thank you for having me. It's such a blessing.
Yes, Lara, would you please let's start with what was your upbringing like? Did you grow up in Christian home and how did you get saved?
Well, I just want to share that I found the Lord when I was around 13 years old, and it was wonderful. My mother was searching and found the Lord. And then she took me to this big event. I mean, it was huge, and I didn't know what was going on, but they had an invitation and I accepted. And it just was life changing. And the best part was they gave me a book called The Way. And a lot of people know about this very special book called The Way. And inside it had a little chart where you could chart every time you read the Bible. So that was just perfect for me. I just um, could chart everything and read the whole thing. And it was the word, and loved it. And that's really how I came to Christ.
Hmm.
And so I was raised in a divorced family home. And so my mother and father were divorced and they were not believers. And then the blessing from that is that we did find the Lord after the divorce. And so it was hard, but in a way it was wonderful. We found the Lord, that we had a need that was filled by the Lord, and that gave us so much hope. And I've loved the Lord my entire life.
Do you have siblings or you're the only child in the house?
I have three brothers, so that just says a lot right there. Three brothers, only girl, and so I learned a lot about sports, a lot about throwing balls and how not to throw a ball and look like a girl. So yes, I did.
I get it. I have two brothers myself, two older brothers. So,
You understand, right? Don't
yes,
look like a girl. You just
that's wonderful. All right. Well, how did you meet your husband? He is such a known exorcist internationally, not only in America. How did you guys meet for the first time?
It has been such a blessing. I cannot even tell you, marrying Bob Larson. Um, I was hired by his vice president in his ministry. And so I was the conference and special events coordinator. And so we would have these huge meetings, anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 people. And so we would have these huge meetings and I would coordinate these events. And so then, more importantly, I loved journalism. My background was in journalism. And so Bob was writing a book at the time, and I began editing the book for him. And that's really where we started talking about spiritual things, because they were brought up because of all these prompts in the book. So I was asking him so many questions, and we just clicked. We knew it was God without even a question. And it's been the greatest adventure ever since.
What
Really.
was he already an exorcist when you guys met?
Yes. And now I was not familiar with that. I came from a church background where you don't say the D word, don't say the devil, anything about the devil, because that's going to draw the devil to you. And so I was just, what in the world's going on? And Bob was not subtle. So on one of our first dates, he took me to help a woman who had DID, multiple personality disorder. And I think he was planning that if I thought that was too weird, maybe I was not the one that God had for him. So we went and he worked with this young woman, and I was deeply moved. to see her and her pain because I had been kind of sheltered from all that. So that was my litmus test, and I guess I passed.
Mm-hmm. 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 And so you guys often work as a couple
Yes.
and like as a team, especially with counseling people. Can you describe your role in those ministry times? And do you also do a solo ministry?
Well, I love working with Bob as a team. It's wonderful. We bring different set of strengths, and my heart is for women and their pain. And I think that really comes from my mom and what pain she went through. So I just have a tenderness for women and the pain that they go through. And so I am able to be used by the Lord to really communicate some of the hurts of women and some of the issues, just really processing healing. Sometimes we're defending people that have hurt us. Sometimes we don't want to hear that someone has really been abusive, because we're protecting them. And so it's very helpful. I think the Lord uses me. I pray the Lord uses me so much to be able to have that kind of softness and understanding. And praise God, Bob is a warrior. He's out there fighting. And so it's a nice combination. And yes, I am able to do deliverance ministry as well. And but usually we're just a team.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Yeah, it's really it's so rewarding.
Mm-hmm. When did you start doing ministry together? Right away when you guys got married, or you kind of had to go into that gradually?
Well, I would say that it takes quite a bit of learning and understanding. And so it took me a while to understand the process and the need and to not really be fearful, where in the beginning there was some fear around it. And Bob would always say, being in the center of God's will is the safest place to be. And I would say, that's so much truth. It is, that's what we have to stand on, not the power of the enemy, but
Right.
being in God's will and being used. So that to me is very important.
So you overcame your fears and kind of
Yes. Oh,
learned
oh,
more, and then you kind of walked into this ministry with your husband, correct?
yes, yes. And then we had our first child. We were so thrilled to have our first child about 18 months after we were married.
Mm-hmm.
And then my job description changed. And really, God made it so clear to me that it was God, my husband, my family. And I poured myself and all of my energy, all of my prayers, everything into the ministry, my husband, and my children. And that was as limited as I could be. That was my narrow focus. And that really kept it simple because I wasn't thinking, well, what are my 10 options today? It was my family. And that was my focus because Bob was so much in demand and so busy that I really had to be the rock and hold down a very stable uh, childhood for my children. I just had to be the rock, just steady, just and really be there for them. And he was there as well, but I
Mm-hmm.
was just the steady partner of the team.
Right. I love how you said, how you set your priorities without being insecure to prioritize your family at a particular season of your life, because there's a lot of drive, and even like in the church culture, a lot of drive to be someone on a platform, to do something. And especially for women, those that cultural expectation, and the family takes the back seat. And I love how you supported your husband in the ministry, yet you put your focus into the family without any insecurities and prioritizing that above anything else. And
Well, it
when,
was a challenge because I had taken my LSATs and I was planning on being a lawyer before I met Bob. And so I was very career oriented, but I thought that with my family and really training my family up in the way of the Lord was the most important thing, and that they were going to grow up and it was going to happen quickly. And all the women would say to me, "Oh, it's going to go so quickly." And I'd be sitting there with three children, some in diapers, thinking, it seems like it's going slowly right now, but I still loved it. But it seemed like, how can this go so quickly? And sure enough,
Right.
now they're grown. So I was very blessed to be able to really hear from the Lord that children first. That was it. And we did other things. I mean, I home educated my children. And so that was very demanding and wonderful. I loved it, but it was a full-time job educating them. We created different co-ops.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Those educational co-ops
Yep.
where different people have different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
And so I led a lot of the co-ops
Wow.
and I was very busy. So, and I'd always say, do I want leadership? Just because it demanded so much, but the Lord would always put me in those positions. So it was very, um, it demanded a lot, but I'm not sorry for 1 minute. My children are beyond the biggest blessings.
Right.
They are everything.
And you guys raised three daughters together, right? And are they
Yes.
all serving the Lord?
Yes, I can say that with the deepest joy that I can even communicate. Ah, that they are all serving the Lord.
That's wonderful. Laura, could you please tell me what was your hardest and maybe scariest moment in life, maybe in ministry and family combined? Yeah.
Okay. So one time, well, we would travel, like I had mentioned, together. And one of the trips that we loved to take was going to South Africa. And we would go on a little safari beforehand or be with the pastor who would show the children all kinds of wild animals, and it was just so much fun. And so, but one time we did not go, and Bob went alone. I don't know what happened. I forget, it's so long ago. And then I got a phone call, and in the middle of ministry he had been injured. And so that made me very nervous. He broke some ribs. And so he had to fly back injured, and I was very concerned about him. I just didn't know if he would, I don't know, if a blood clot. I was worried about so many things, and I knew the Lord had him. And so, but still, as a wife, I was a little concerned. And then another time recently, well, in the last few years, there was someone who not hit my husband in a ministry session. And briefly knocked him out. And then I confronted the person or the
Mm-hmm.
spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And I just said, I bind you. And the spirit just went flat on the ground. So praise be to God. God was in charge. But that was a moment that I could have definitely avoided in my life. Definitely avoided.
How would you avoid it?
Well, I would say that if God would have said, you don't have to go through this, I would have said, thank you, God. Thank you, God. But in ways, some of the tough times make us stronger. We need to trust more. We need to trust the Holy Spirit, that whatever hardship we endure, that He's going to use it for good, no matter what it is.
Yes.
And
Amen.
so I believe that with all of my heart. And so the challenges are there for a reason.
Yeah, to carry this ministry of casting out demons, it's not always easy because you're working with people, and every time you work with people, there could be such unpredictable moments that we have to be ready for, and it's um, it's very rare to see that a couple working together, side by side, with this kind of ministry on this kind of level, and I just love that. Laura, I know you guys both wrote a book that is called Set Your Family Free. And I want to kind
Yeah.
of dive into that right now. You talk about spiritual warfare perspective in your book, in raising a family specifically. What do
Yes.
you mean by that? And how does someone acquire that perspective?
Well, a lot of times we're caught up in what activities our children are going to do and the protocol of what we should do to raise the perfect child. And I think it's so important from a spiritual perspective to observe some of the generational and family issues that have gone on before you had this child or these children. And so sometimes we want to gloss over some of the more maybe embarrassing or dramatic parts of our family's past. And so I think addressing those things head on is much more effective to helping to raise our children in a healthy environment. And so if people had trouble with drugs or alcohol, suicide, um, rejection, divorce, and sometimes it's even criminal behavior, a lot of people just don't want to bring that up. I think they believe that if they don't tell the children won't follow that behavior or that pattern. But sometimes these things are spiritual. And so they're going down the family line. And if they're not confronted, they continue. And so, like Bob always says, a curse isn't broken until it's broken.
Yeah.
And so that approach is much more empowering to be able to thwart these attacks on our children and also to make them humble, to say, there are challenges and I need to face these head on and not pretend that they aren't there. Like we have the perfect bloodline, the perfect everything. It just doesn't happen. And not that we need to be fearful about it or bound by it, but to be knowledgeable about it. I think that's the key.
Yes, I love that. Definitely. Knowledge is huge when you begin to know certain things, the family you're coming from, you can face and, face the things that you need to overcome, and God will definitely help. And what is the trap of trying to hide the problems to present the perfect Christian family? Does that even happen these days?
Well, I mean, I think well meaning people want to do the very best they can. And so they try to make things look so good. And because there's a lot of acceptance and rejection within churches, within friendship groups. And so to put on the best face on everything is what people oftentimes try to do. And it's a veneer and it's a facade, but really the telltale aspect of it is the children because they're little tape recorders and they're recording everything that's going on, the words spoken, the neglect, the absences, the everything, the behaviors. And so they often betray the family script. And oftentimes you just look at it at the script, everyone's going to be perfect, there's going to be
Right.
no problems.
Mm-hmm.
I think that can give children a sense of rejection at such a deep level that they are not perfect and they are not living up to the standard. And sometimes then they reject themselves and they give up. They just are passive because they can't be perfect enough. And I think that's a big danger. And really being able to talk through things and be transparent with our children is so important. And even with our faults,
Yeah.
to admit our faults to our children. I'm sorry, I should have been there for you, or I'm sorry I got angry. I'm sorry that because you're going to make mistakes. But if we can be humble and ask for forgiveness
Mm-hmm.
and not believe this whole facade, this whole lie,
Yeah.
but but be real with one another, especially our children. And I would say admit our faults. I think they will then accept their own faults and be able to work on them and build themselves to be the best person that they can be for God and really to listen to God and hear what his will and purpose is for our lives. Hear the Holy Spirit and know where he wants to lead us.
Yes, definitely. I come from a Slavic background, and it's so natural for Slavic people to put on a mask and pretend like nothing, problems don't exist. everything is good, and God forbid you're a child and you will embarrass your parents, or like um or do something that will shame the family and things like that. I feel like it's also very damaging, because when we are not real, um I'm not saying to, show your problems to everyone and talk about it, but at the same time, not to wear this false assumption that, oh, we are a perfect family, we everything is fine, we don't have any problems, nobody has to know anything. I think that's such an extreme that actually also damages kids in a way, just like you mentioned, correct?
Oh, I think you said it so beautifully. Uh, that's perfect, actually, what you said. I mean, I just think that I think the children suffer. Older people, the adults might have played this game for a long time, where
Mm-hmm.
the children just don't have the emotional ability to handle that kind of a deception or hypocrisy within their
Yes.
own family.
Yes.
They don't understand. We hear some of the in ministry. My husband will ask people, what was your family life like? And they'll say, well, we were Christians. And I'll say, great. They'll say, yeah, we were such great Christians, except my dad beat my mom, and he would just get drunk and he would beat my mom, but he loved us.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's a lot of confusion there. It's like, were we good? Were we bad? What was all this behavior? And it's very hard to have emotional stability when they witness so much instability.
Definitely. Laura, can you please show the book? You have a physical copy by you. I just want everyone to see the book that we're talking about. Set Your Family Free, guys. So, this book is what we're referring to. Laura and Bob together wrote this book, and I really encourage you to look it up and get it, especially if you are going to be raising your family. I think it's a very powerful book, and they have so much experience in this field and so much knowledge. I think we all can glean from. This live stream is short, but you can grab that book and just equip yourself.
Thank
Laura,
you so
my next question to you would be, what are the some false assumptions of couples in crisis? You also talk about that in your book.
Okay. Um, well, number one, you don't have enough faith. People will say, if I just pray more about it, which prayer is an amazing thing. Okay. We know prayer is a great, vital, but sometimes not facing the issues that need to be dealt with, they don't allow the person to have God come in and do the work that God wants to do or is able to do. So they will pretend that these prayers without action are effective, but we need to have prayer with action. So if someone is in maybe a rager, they get really upset all the time. Well, I just don't know why I get upset. I'm going to pray. I'm going to pray. And then they rage again on their children. No, well, instead of taking the action, getting therapy, getting deliverance, getting help, and taking action that certainly God would have them take to prevent any more damage from their family, I should say,
Mm-hmm.
their spouses. And so to me, again, it's dealing with that veneer, getting rid of the veneer, being real, and being humble. God loves the humble heart. And that is because we can get help, we can ask for help, we can get help. And then that also means we'll be teachable. So when we get the help and we're humble, we'll be able to have effective change really for our family. Let me see what else I wrote down. Um, oh, the blaming. Blaming is very toxic. So some people will be super spiritual and blame everyone that it is their fault. The problems are their fault. And so that's just a broken, toxic system where it's everyone's fault. I know Bob and I will say to each other, um, when there's a disagreement, which happens, and sometimes we'll just say to each other, no one wins. You don't win, I don't win. We are a team. And if someone thinks that they're winning something, they really are losing. And so finally getting to that place where you're a team and neither of you win when there's a disagreement or a problem and you're working on things together.
I love that. I love that you mentioned that it's kind of like a perspective. If you see yourself and your spouse as a team, you can't win by yourself. If one is losing, you both are losing. And if another is losing, you both are losing. If one is winning, you both are winning. It's that a mindset almost like doesn't put two spouses against each other, but like, hey, we're a team. And I love how you guys um, are such a team in your marriage to look up to. Was it always like this, or you kind of had some rough patches that you had to come to that um, realization?
Well, it was all so much growing, so much learning. I mean, I got onto this this adventure and Bob was going 100 miles an hour. So we were having these huge events, all these different shows we were attending, all these NRB conventions, CBN conventions, just with the radio show every day. It was just fast moving. So it was, for me especially, a lot of learning. And I think for Bob as well, just to slow down, enjoy your family, build your family. So we really had times where we had to learn. There were more difficult times. We've had challenges, but we always felt like a team, sometimes an imperfect team, but a team. And we were there for each other. We trusted each other. And that was really the biggest part of it, is really that we trusted each other, that we were both seeking the Lord, both doing our very best, and sometimes blowing it, but giving it everything we had. And it was a learning process. And I think there's stages in a marriage, and that's a whole different topic, but
Yeah.
stages in marriage that you go through. And it was a big change, like you and Vlad having your first baby. Well, that to me was such a big change. All of a sudden, our world went from the two of us to this beautiful baby, and the focus changed, our hearts changed, everything. You just don't know how much you can love until you see that little baby in your arms. You just I've never felt that kind of love. So it's just powerful. And I'm sure Bob is the same. And making those changes in your entire lifestyle, in your goals, in every aspect of your life. So there's been easier times and harder times, and but it's all been a great adventure. It really has been.
That's wonderful. That is great. What are some top ways that Satan can attack a family? Would you mention? I know you talk about that in your book as well.
Okay. So I think that there's a lot of them. I think some of the top ways are a spouse or one of the spouses who's just very uncooperative. And so they are not on board. They either don't say you want to homeschool. Say you decided, Lana, I'm going to homeschool. And then Vlad said, no, we're not homeschooling. And didn't even listen
Hmm.
and to hear maybe why you wanted to. And so I think that would create a difficult situation. I love it when a husband will say, let me listen to what your proposal is. What do you think? What are the benefits? And then be able to work together. But someone who's not cooperative, that sends a huge message to the children. So I think that's very difficult, and you're working uphill. You're just pushing cement uphill, trying to have unity and
Hmm.
peace
Hmm.
and joy in a home. I think that's very challenging. Another one is sometimes extended family can make it a challenge. You just
Hmm.
pray that everyone's on board with you, with the extended family. But sometimes that's a challenge. Sometimes there's jealousy. Sometimes there's animosity. Sometimes people um, just comprehend things differently. And so I think that can be a big challenge. And so one thing that Bob and I did was we have dear friends by the name of Bob and Cheryl Beal, and they've written a book about questions before, it's called Preventing Divorce. their book, and it's wonderful. And you go through this book and you list everything that's really important to you, such as what happens on Christmas. What do we do on Christmas? Do we go to your folks' house, my folks? What is that? What is that going to look like? But you plan it before it happens, and it's emotional. You plan it, and what happens when your brother wants to borrow money? Whatever it is, all these different questions, and then you answer them. So
Mm-hmm.
you know you're not caught off guard. Well, I don't know what we're going to do. And then you get in a fight because there's emotional
Yeah.
baggage around it and guilt. So it's just nice if you have a plan going into the marriage. So to me, that's really a big way that the enemy attacks.
Right. Definitely.
Of course, the biggest one is if someone is demonized, as you well know, and you've seen it in your ministry,
Mm-hmm.
with families. And you can have, I keep mentioning the rage husband, the husband that might be raging, doing terrible things,
Mm-hmm.
scaring his family.
Mm-hmm.
You can have people who have hate and anger. And sometimes a spouse will be in a disagreement with their partner, and it seems like they're just fighting the demon, that there's a demon coming
Mm-hmm.
up and it's
Mm-hmm.
just fighting them. And so
Mm-hmm.
that can make it almost impossible to get through marriage
Mm-hmm.
and have any peace.
Mm-hmm.
And so that is a person I would recommend to get a deliverance or an exorcism right away,
Yeah.
because it's not worth ruining a family, your children. It's not worth it. This is too important, this job of raising these children, because we answer to God
Yes.
how these children are reared, raised. And so it's so important. If there's anything that's hindering a person, to walk into it, address it, and get rid of it. If not for yourself, for your children, and then future generations. You can be the people, the people can actually break all these curses in the family bloodline. To me, that's profound. It's just profound. So those to me are some of the biggest ways
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that families are attacked.
Mm-hmm.
There's a few. Would you like me to go into any others, or I'm
You
not
you
sure on
can
our time?
mention a couple of others. Yeah.
Okay.
I know that there is
Busy.
a big list, and if you guys are very interested, I suggest you to just go and get a book and read the whole thing. We're mentioning just like bits and pieces of it.
Yes, thank you. So another one is busyness with life's demands, and that's
Mm-hmm.
always a challenge,
Right.
especially in ministry or with someone who really wants to help people, because there's always someone who needs help. And that's where having the hierarchy of where is it in this hierarchy does that fit? And if I have that time available, if my children's needs are met, then I have time. That's what I would say to
Mm-hmm.
myself. But that can be a big challenge in ministry, because there's just really never an end to people needing help.
Yes.
And and we just say that humbly, because there's so much hurt out there right now. So many people that are in very difficult positions in your heart.
Yes.
And so, and then with the conferences, the different things in ministry you can be involved in right now, just making ends meet for many families is a big job. And so just really prioritizing the family, having a plan for your family is very helpful. I loved having a mission statement. So this might sound funny, but we as a family, and I explained it in the book, but we had a mission statement as to what our family was about and what we were going to make important, and the character that we were going to exhibit between each other and really have, and the way we would worship and put God first. And so we had a mission statement. And so when you're on that team, when you were on the Larson team, you understood what it was, but everyone helped to craft the mission statement. Bob and I just didn't hand down the mission statement, but we all got together and we
Mm-hmm.
talked through it.
I love
What's
it.
important? And so everyone felt a part of it, not subject to it. So
Right.
it was very helpful for us. And I think then when you are measuring the busyness with your priorities, it's easier and everyone's on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
So our
Mm-hmm.
page was dad has this amazing mission that he needs to get the word of deliverance and exorcism out to the world.
Mm-hmm.
We knew it was a big job and God had given him that job. So we tried to support him as much as we could and within reason. So that was a great part of our devotion to him and the ministry.
But
So
Bob
that
is also, he's an amazing father. Because I
yeah.
remember when he came to our city to do a conference with us and he brought his daughter. And I was watching and I was like, okay, he, because there's this toxic thing, in my opinion, that's going on in many um, churches and pastors' family. And I come from a pastor's family. I'm a pastor's kid. And my dad was amazing family guy with having and leading a church or a ministry. And I saw that in Bob that it wasn't just all about ministry, 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 and my family and kids will catch up to me. He was a good father, and I saw that in him. What can you say to a person or maybe like a mother that is having an issue with um, having those family priorities that maybe a husband or a pastor is putting their ministry above the family or children because that is very damaging for kids at the end of the day. And I do receive messages on Instagram sometimes from pastors' wives who ask me, what should I do? Because I feel like we are abandoned and I feel guilty for even bringing this up to my husband because he says he's serving God. What can you say to those kind of um, situations and wives?
Well, for me, it would be very simple. Your first ministry, husband, is your family. Your first ministry is your family. If you've not done that well, you've done nothing well. And that's really how I feel. If he is not the father that he needs to be, nothing else is going to go right. And if Christ is not at the head of the marriage, that it's not going to go right. And there is an order we've been given, and that is very clear. And so, really, I think a man of God will have a heart of God, and that should resonate with them. If you don't do that right, the rest, what does it mean? What does it mean? So that was my side of the partnership. And he had a heart for the children
Right.
and just reminding them how important they are in the home, that we need you. We need you in the home. We need you to sow into our lives. And they feel needed and loved. Because I think sometimes it's just, well, dad is in passing, he's just busy. But if they feel needed and loved,
Hmm.
and the wife supports that and in a way is very strong in that, then I think it helps to keep him centered because it's very tempting to get off center. It's very
Yes.
difficult. I think being a pastor is one of the most difficult jobs there is. And there's so many demands. And sometimes it can be, people aren't very thankful sometimes because they just don't understand that there's a challenge there and
Hmm.
they're torn as well. And they want to be able to provide for their family, provide for the kids, provide for every
Yes.
need, everything, their families. So they have so much. And then they're under such scrutiny. Well, he didn't say this, or he said that wrong, or he should have said, and it's just they're under so much pressure.
Hmm.
So I just have a heart for pastors too, because their jobs are extraordinarily difficult, unless they're very removed. There's some of the pastors just they're very removed from the day to day.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
I think that's a little bit different, but
Right. Yeah. And there is another side to it. And I love how you portraying such a balance in raising family and also supporting your husband in a ministry. There are, what would you say to women who feel like they can't support their husbands and they don't support their husbands in the ministry, which is the calling from the Lord? what would you say to them? How important it is to support your husband in what he's doing?
They need you. These husbands who are in ministry need their wives. The two are one flesh, and they need that support. They need your respect. And in loving and respecting them, and because sometimes they don't get that anywhere else,
Hmm.
uh, that deep, deep respect, not just, hey, Pastor, great job, love you,
Right.
but more really deep, emotionally fulfilling kind of need and respect, I should say. And so it's just, I think they need to take time with the Lord and really ask the Lord to give them understanding, knowledge, and discernment as to what they can do for their husbands and what the limits are,
Hmm.
and to have that talk of that we need to be a team. And I think it really boils down to being that team and understanding what that team means and having a structure to it. Sometimes people, pastors, have all the structure at the church. Everything is structured, organized. There's a committee for this, a committee for that. But
Hmm.
sometimes there isn't a structure for the home. And I think it's so important to have an agreed on structure that you have in the home,
I
because then
love that.
it's
I love that.
slipping and sliding all over. Oh, we're not going to do this now because something else usurped this time. Well, no, no, this is what we've agreed on. And it's just going back to that
Hmm.
agreement.
Hmm.
And I think that's so helpful for women, instead of trying to corral them and always feel like they're pulling. Please, I need more. Give me some
Yeah.
crumbs. You know that your needs will be met, and no one's going to be perfect. And having also the grace, but I think it's really important to get that right, because that opens them up to attack, um, to the enemy, because that's just, it can be a big opening.
I love what you mentioned, covering that blind side. We can structure everything so well at the church or a work or a business, yet our families are kind of, well, we'll go with the flow. And I think that could be a blind spot in a family, because I just love how you mentioned that it's important to structure things at home as much as it is outside of the home, so the family can also function, within the certain boundaries and certain things, that if something goes off, now we know where to go back to and see, okay, what went off and how can we fix it? Where did we fell off our structure, in a sense?
That's so good. Yes, absolutely.
Laura, what
That's
are some things that Christian couples believe that are really not true at all, maybe even harmful in
okay.
their
Uh,
relationship?
I think that, just again, going back to the perfect family, there is not such a creation. There is not a perfect family.
Mm-hmm.
And if it looks too good to be true, beware. I've always told my children that if it looks too good to be true, there's an artifice about it, because we're all human, and there's a humility to being human. And so accept your imperfections and grow in them. I think that that's the biggest killer right there, is just really trying to be perfect
Mm-hmm.
and blaming each other. The blame game is very toxic. Again, it's just very toxic.
Mm-hmm.
Going after each other, pitting each other against one another, and having this gallery of children to see this kind of pitting each other against one another. There we go.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
then also the flip side of that is hiding any disagreements.
Mm-hmm.
So mom and dad are so perfect. We're going to go in the bedroom all the time and figure out our differences. And so then the children just don't understand. Well, yes, sometimes people get mad at each other. Sometimes they have disagreements, and
Mm-hmm.
it's very natural. It's just within certain bounds, of course. But I think that that's important for them to see how to resolve conflict, which is such a big portion of life. Um, I think sometimes just allowing your children to be culture driven is a very damaging situation. where they're going to be shaped and formed by the culture, except you want them to
Yeah.
be Christian kids. That can be one of the biggest challenges.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that's hard on a family. I think let's just take care of this ourselves is another big fallacy. And what that means is there's a problem in the family
Mm-hmm.
and people are just going to solve it themselves if it's serious enough. They just don't want to recognize it. They don't want to get help. They don't want to embarrass
Mm-hmm.
themselves. They don't want to crack that facade. And then they don't get any help. Who doesn't really get the help, though? The children. The
Yeah.
children who can't even really understand what their parents are doing,
Yes.
they're harmed by that. They don't understand. There's no conflict resolution, there's no solutions, there's nothing. Things keep
Mm-hmm.
just going the way they're going. And that is a very, very shaky foundation. Instead
Yes.
of having someone say, I've got a problem, whether it's depression, whatever, let's take depression. Say one of the parents is depressed.
Mm-hmm.
They just keep covering for that parent and just not having that parent get any help.
Mm-hmm.
And the parent just kind of withers away
Mm-hmm.
instead of saying, no, we're going to get help. We're going to take that responsibly. We're going to either have them get deliverance, exorcism, or get counseling and get help for it, or go
Or
to a
both. Yeah.
doctor and see
Mm-hmm.
if there are problems with the endocrine system or
Mm-hmm.
their hormones and get help. But take action. And that's very empowering for a child because then they can look back when
Mm-hmm.
inevitable challenges arise in their own lives. Well, my parents solved this. My parents helped each other
Yes.
and got answers, and there are answers. And we don't have to live under this cloak of shame. Like, oh, we're not perfect. Well, now we're shamed. Well, that's a lonely and very terrifying place for children to be. And
Absolutely. Yeah. It's going back to that facade that nothing is wrong. We have a good, perfect family. We don't need anybody's help. Nobody needs to know our problems. It's that fallacy that people fall into. Instead of showing that example to their children, it's okay to seek out help. It's okay to become healthier. It's okay to do these things. And I love how you mentioned that this is one of the fallacies that people can believe. And me coming from the Slavic background, this is so like real in our culture because people just refuse to seek help in many ways. And I am kind of noticing, those patterns and stuff. And I think um, that has to be broken. It's okay to seek help when things are tough, and there has to be other people involved in a family in certain situations. And with
that's
that being said, Laura, what makes a good family?
well, first of all, having Christ as the head. Christ as the head of your family, there's just no substitute. Um, and the Holy Spirit filling your family. And that's the best start right there. And without that, I just feel so much sadness because it's hard when you're talking with people, ministering to people, and that foundation is not there. So if you can build that foundation, no matter what happens with your children, the different things that come along, the challenges, they will have that foundation. They know where to go. They know who to call on. And so that's so important. And then it's also important to have strong bonds of communication. Really be able to talk to one another. Keep that door open. Sometimes I'd say to my children, what can I do better? What can I do better as a mother? And I listened and I
But
really
Laura,
wanted.
I'm sorry, I'm going to interrupt you. It takes a lot of humility as a parent to come up to your child and say, what can I do better? A lot of people don't possess that, but I think it comes down to humility, breaking your pride, and asking your child, what can I do better? And not like reacting, but listening to them. What do they have to say? I think that is just wow.
That helped me a lot because my children were very fair about it. They wouldn't say, well, we want more candy or
Right.
something like this. Mom, you could give us candy all the time. They were more just, Mom, if you could not demand so much in schooling, maybe have less writing assignments or whatever it was,
Mm-hmm.
or
Mm-hmm.
listen to me more, Mom. Maybe you need to hear what I think I need to write on, or whatever it was. I'm
Mm-hmm.
just using school
Yeah.
examples, or just be more patient, or they were very fair about their assessments and very thoughtful. So I was always blessed with they would come back with. And I needed to hear it because, again, we have one time to do this, one time to parent well. And now my children are grown. And so I'm just very thankful for them. Just being able to talk to them. And also, I loved, we would spend 15 minutes a day. Now, it sounds funny, but I read something that said people don't talk to the people in their lives. They don't really sit and talk.
Hmm.
They're so busy that they don't take the time. So I thought, you know what? We're going to have these 15-minute sessions every day just to sit and just talk. And it was funny in the beginning, they'd sit down, sit and talk to me, and they just weren't sure what to say. And then all of a sudden, they'd think of something that they really wanted to talk about. And that 15 minutes would be over like
Wow.
this. But
Wow.
those were the most valuable times, just sitting and talking.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they really started to love it. But that's one of the best things that we did to, again, bring about good communication and transparency and really to learn their hearts instead of just assuming things. Sometimes there is something on the heart of your child and you don't know it, but you have to take that intentional time
Yeah.
to sit and listen and really care. Not just like, okay, come on, I've got 15 minutes. I got to go to cook
Right.
tonight. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's got to be, I really care. I
Yes.
want it. So, and then having, excuse me, emotional, spiritual, and sexual intimacy in a relationship. I think that's very important for a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, a lot of people will say, we love each other, but we sleep in different bedrooms. Or, you know, there's some challenges. And again,
Yes.
it's getting to the heart of what's wrong and really opening those doors. So making sure that between a husband and a wife,
Mm-hmm.
you're emotionally, spiritually, and sexually in tuned together. And I think that really helps the children. They sense these things.
Yes.
I mean, you can say everything's great, but kids just are like sonar. They know there's a problem and they react with their behavior,
Mm-hmm.
something. If something's wrong with the parents. And then I think very affirmative behavior towards your children and your spouse, just affirming them when you can. There's enough that goes wrong. It's so
Yeah.
good to really appreciate who they are. And to me, it's got to be authentic. Really what you think about your children, not just, hey, you're beautiful, hey,
Yeah.
but really, you are a beautiful person. And I'm so blessed and I love you so much. Whatever it is that you really authentically feel towards that child, that is affirming. I think it's important to share that. Sometimes we think it. I think, didn't I tell you how much I love you today? And I didn't even realize I got so caught up. I didn't take that time. And to be able to communicate that outwardly.
Mm-hmm.
And then, um, oh, here's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
To have your expectations communicated.
Yes,
So
that's a big one.
their expectations communicated. So it's not just, well, I'm mad at you. You didn't do such and such a job. And they might think, I didn't know I needed to do it. Or even with a husband and wife, that happens. But
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I was even supposed to do this.
Mm-hmm.
How can I do a good job if I don't know I needed to do it? And so I think that helps with children as well as spouses. Oh, here's giving your family, your children, emotional security,
Mm-hmm.
which is more important. I can't even express how important that is. That if they're being naughty, you still love them. If they are acting up, you still love them. If they are upset, if they're scared, if they're intimidated, whatever it is, that you love them. And that's so important. And that they know that they know that they know that God loves them and mom and dad do. And I have a few more, or is that?
Go ahead. Yeah,
Let
you
me,
can mention a few more.
let's see here. Well, this goes without saying, a stable spiritual environment free from hypocrisy. That is very, very helpful for children to take a strong stand for the Lord,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not, let's say we're doing all these things and let's do things differently, because that is a character breaker in an individual. And then let's see. Oh, I like this one. Open to hearing contrarian thinking from the children without critical judgment. And what that means is if they have questions, maybe about their faith, maybe about having your husband be a pastor, maybe there's so many different things that they might be challenged, have contrarian thinking. And so then to be able to let them express it and not say, how dare you say such a thing? How could you even believe such a thing? But let them work through it and not harbor that and eat that. I call it eating these negative emotions. They will express them and work through them. And then it's out in the open. The dangerous kind of negative feelings are the ones that go down and they eat them or they repress them. That is what can be very damaging to them and your family as a whole, because they might have all these, well, I don't believe in God anyway. Well,
Mm-hmm.
let's talk about it. Let's
Mm-hmm.
talk about it and let's work through it.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going to be a much safer place for that child to express those emotions rather than hiding them.
Right. Absolutely.
And
That's a
that
good
to me
one.
is very important. And
Mm-hmm.
again, going back to, we are always a team. We're always a team. We're in this together, and you can work through these feelings. You can talk to me. And so, I mean, okay, this is an example gone bad. So you open yourself up to talking to your child. They say, well, I'm really doubting God. And you say, let's talk about God. And you go through some of the questions that they have and you research, and they feel pretty good about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next couple of days, someone might turn and say, hey, you doubter. Like, wait, wait, wait. So that's using something that they trusted you with. Now they're being hurt with this.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
that's very damaging, and they probably won't open up again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so you have to be so careful with their emotions and their trusting you. That's key, because they're going to have different thoughts, different feelings. And if they can express them, not on social media,
Mm-hmm.
not to somebody else, but to you,
Yes.
you can really talk with them and create a team. Team Larson,
Yes.
team,
Team
it just
Larson.
sounds
I
kind of
love it.
corny,
I love it.
really.
So much wisdom. Wow. And guys, again, I encourage you to get that book and read it and study it and apply it in your family. It's very powerful. Laura, can you raise it up again for me real
Yeah,
quick so people see how it looks like? And just yeah,
this one.
look it up. Oh, okay, that's Vlad's book. No, not that one yet. But anyways, guys, I encourage you to get that book, strengthen your family, your relationship. It's it's powerful. And Laura, my last question, it's a spontaneous one, but I really want to hear that from you. You and your husband being in the ministry of deliverance and exorcism, how did you introduce that to your children, and how old were they? Were you guys afraid for them? And I know there's a lot of parents who really shield their kids completely from that kind of a scary stuff. What did you guys do?
This is a really good question. Well, I really appreciate it. And that is that it was very natural. So we would be in a meeting, and um, I should say that Bob really started doing these kind of exorcisms in public when our youngest was born.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would be there. Of course, I always kept my children with me. So they would be in the meeting and they would hear things. And so it became something that was normal, that there is spiritual warfare. Look at the Gospels. We'd read the Gospels when they got a little older, but they were very familiar with it. If something got really out of hand or something was sexual, I'd walk out of the sanctuary and then come back in. But just
Mm-hmm.
using God's wisdom about that
Mm-hmm.
and never in fear, just, oh no, just walking out, just very calmly, not creating a fearful environment.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I think that spiritual warfare is happening all around us all the time.
Right.
And so some people will say, well, that's scary. These demons are right there. And Bob will say, they're all around. You don't know that you're going to a masseuse that has demons. You don't know if who you're in line, not to be fearful, but people with demons are all around us.
Yes.
But it's wonderful when you know where they are and they're getting help. They have a humble heart to be able to get help. So I think children understanding that is so important. And so they saw their dad doing good for people. They
Mm-hmm.
saw people's lives changing.
Mm-hmm.
And their dad was, in a way, their hero because he was making a difference. He was challenging evil. He was doing things that were tough.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a little study about do hard things, and it was doing hard things. Well, that's what their dad did all the time. And so they really appreciated it. And it was wonderful in homeschooling. It was a nice kind of bookend for us in that they were able to see the causes of what happened and the causes, consequences of sin. And so they weren't shielded from every bad thing in the world, but they saw here's what happens when someone's an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what happens when someone is in rage. Here's someone, all these different things that people would be oppressed with. The children can see firsthand. There is a consequence for that if they're not healed and set free. So I think it really helped them. It matured them greatly. And sometimes I don't really think they understand how much they understood as young people.
Mm-hmm.
But I understand the sensitivity of not giving them something that is too much for them. If you sense that your children are frightened, then you
Mm-hmm.
just talk to them.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you move out of that environment,
Mm-hmm.
talk to them, explain to them, and really watch your child. Because you don't say, I'm going to make my children strong. I'm bringing them into this session and they're scared to
Right.
death.
Right.
That would not be what I would recommend.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really watching them, talking to them. If they're upset, resolving it, because
Mm-hmm.
you don't want to ever traumatize a
Of
child with
course.
seeing something that is going to frighten them, but just being very wise in it
Yeah.
and listening to them.
I love that. Using this balance and wisdom for your children, not to shield them from the reality of spiritual world. Like you said, we walk around, we live in a world that is spiritual, and they have to be exposed to that, but at the same time using wisdom not to traumatize your kids. And different there are different kinds of children. There are more sensitive children, there are less sensitive children, and I think parents should exercise their own discernment in this case, but at the same time not to shield your kids from knowing that, hey, this is the reality. You don't need to be afraid of the devil, of the demons. Jesus's name is powerful, and things like that. I love it. Thank you so much, Laura. I have so much respect for you guys and so much honor for your family. And I'm the one that's definitely looking up to your family, and what you guys are doing, and your relationship, your marriage is just so exemplary. Just want to say thank you so much. And thank you for agreeing to come on here and do this interview. I think it was amazing, and it's going to serve a lot to people. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And I just want to say blessings to you and Vlad in this very important and special time in your lives with this little one right now who's hearing everything we're saying and is already so blessed. And so I'm just going to be praying for you that everything goes so smoothly and the most exciting time in your life. And after 13 years, Lana, it blows me away. So all the anticipation, all the blessings, you're going to your heart is going to grow 5 times bigger than it all.
Thank you.
See that
Thank
baby.
you.
God bless
Yes,
you.
thank you
And
so much, dear. Thank you.
my books, I love all my books. I cannot wait to add this wonderful book. Marks.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you, Lana.